A friend of mine, sharp, decent, the sort of person who reads the terms and conditions before he ticks the box, once told me he'd never go into sales because he didn't want to manipulate people. He said it the way you'd confess a moral position. So I asked him what he actually did for a living. He ran a small charity. He spent his days convincing donors to part with their money, persuading volunteers to give up their weekends, talking a reluctant council into a grant. He was, by any honest measure, one of the most influential people I knew. He just couldn't see it because somewhere along the way, he'd been handed a false equation. Influence equals manipulation. Manipulation is dirty. Therefore, influence is dirty. Therefore, anyone decent keeps their hands off the controls. It's one of the most expensive misunderstandings I encounter, and I encounter it constantly. In coaching rooms, in boardrooms, in the quiet self-doubt of people who suspect that getting what they want must somehow mean taking it from someone else. So let's do the thing nobody seems to bother doing. Let's draw the line precisely. Not as a vibe, not as a gut feeling about whether something felt a bit much, as a real testable distinction you can carry into your next difficult conversation. Here's what 30 years of practicing this has taught me. Persuasion and manipulation are not 2 points on one sliding scale. They're two different things entirely. They use some of the same tools, language, framing, emotion, timing, the way a surgeon and an attacker both use a blade. The tool is not the crime. The intent, the transparency, and the direction of benefit are what separate the healer from the harm. So start with the discomfort itself, because it isn't irrational. It's wiring. Your brain is, above all else, a threat detection machine. Long before it evolved to write poetry or close deals, its core job was keeping a fragile primate alive in a world full of things that wanted to eat it. That legacy is still running. The amygdala, your brain's smoke alarm, scans every interaction for danger, and it's biased, deliberately, toward false positives. Mistake a stick for a snake, you lose a moment. Mistake a snake for a stick, you lose everything. Evolution settled that trade-off long ago, and it settled it in favor of fear. So when someone tries to move you, some ancient part of you flags it. Something is being done to me. That flicker of resistance, that bracing, that's your threat system, doing exactly what it was built to do. It can't tell, in the first instant, whether the person in front of you is opening a door or setting a trap. It just registers the push. And this explains two things at once. It explains why we instinctively distrust persuasion, and it explains why manipulation is so corrosive. When influence comes with the lights on, your threat system can stand down. You see the offer, you weigh it, you say no if you like. When influence comes in the dark, when you're moved by something you can't quite name, the threat never resolves. You walk away with a faint unease, a sense of having been handled. You were pushed by a hand you couldn't see. Trust, neurologically, is the opposite of that. It's the state where the threat system has stood down enough for genuine cooperation to happen. The calm that lets two nervous systems work together instead of guarding against each other. Every act of honest persuasion is, at bottom, an attempt to earn that stand down. Every act of manipulation is an attempt to bypass it. Hold on to that. It's the hinge the whole thing turns on. Now forget the moralizing for a moment. If you want a working definition, one you can apply in real time without a philosophy degree, it comes down to three questions. First, what is my intent? Persuasion moves someone toward a decision that also serves them. Manipulation moves someone toward a decision that serves you at their expense. That's the spine of it. And notice, it says nothing about whether you benefit. Of course you benefit. You wanted the sale, the yes, the agreement. Persuasion isn't self-sacrifice. The test isn't do I gain. The test is do they. The line runs through the direction of benefit, not the presence of it. People get tangled here because they imagine ethical influence means having no agenda. Nonsense. I've never had a conversation worth having in which I wanted nothing. Wanting something is not the sin. Wanting it at someone else's cost while pretending otherwise, that's the sin. Second question. Could it survive the light? Here's the cleanest test I know. Imagine the person you're influencing could see right now exactly what you're doing and why. The frame you're using, the emotion you're reaching for, the outcome you're steering toward. If they'd nod, fair enough, that's a good case. You're persuading. If they'd feel betrayed, wait, that's what you were doing. You're manipulating. Persuasion can survive transparency. It often improves under it. Manipulation cannot. It dies the instant it's named because its entire mechanism depends on you not seeing the mechanism. That's the tell. Anything that only works in the dark is working against you. Third question, and this one comes straight out of my NLP training, and it's the most subtle. Whose model of the world am I respecting? Every person carries a model of the world, their values, their goals, what they're trying to build. Persuasion works inside someone's model. It connects what you're offering to what they already want. Manipulation overrides their model. It gets them to act against their own values by exploiting a glitch, a fear, a bias they're not aware of. One honors what the person actually wants. The other hijacks the machinery underneath their wanting. Run a conversation through those three: intent, transparency, whose model, and the line stops being fuzzy. It gets sharp enough to act on. Now here's what makes this genuinely hard. Persuasion and manipulation reach for the same instruments. Take reciprocity, the deep human tendency to return a favor, documented exhaustively in Robert Cialdini's work on influence. When someone gives you something, you feel the pull to give back. So, is that a tool of persuasion or manipulation? Both. Neither. It depends entirely on the three questions. Give a prospect a genuinely useful free guide, expecting nothing, because it actually helps them. And if they feel warmer toward you later, that's reciprocity working as it should. Everyone can see exactly what happened. But engineer a trivial gift specifically to trigger an obligation wildly out of proportion to it, the timeshare lunch, the free pen stapled to a contract, and you're exploiting the same instinct against the person's interest in the dark. Same mechanism, opposite ethics, and the others run the same way. Social proof is honest when the crowd is real and dishonest when you fake the queue outside an empty restaurant. Authority persuades when the expertise is genuine and manipulates when it's a borrowed lab coat. Scarcity is fair when the thing is genuinely limited, and rotten when you invent a countdown clock. In every case, the principle itself is morally neutral. It's a fact about how human minds work, the way gravity is a fact about how bodies fall. What you do with it is where ethics lives. And this is the whole spine of it. So let me say it plainly. Real change isn't magic, it's mechanism. The same is true of influence. There's no dark art here, no mind control, none of the woo the word persuasion drags behind it. There are just mechanisms, reliable, studied, human, and the choice of whether to use them for someone or against them. Now, the part that should matter even to someone who doesn't care about ethics at all. Because I'll be honest, not everyone is moved by it's the right thing to do. Fine. Here's the harder argument. Manipulation works once, persuasion compounds. Manipulation is a single round strategy. It depends on the other person never knowing what you did, which means it depends on you never being found out, never dealing with them twice, never having your name precede you into the room. And we do not live in that world. We live in a world of reputation, of reviews, of the friend who tells the friend, of the colleague who remembers. Manipulation borrows trust at a brutal interest rate, and the bill always comes. So here is the test I actually use. Strip to something you can run mid-conversation. Before you make the move, the frame, the ask, the emotional appeal, pause for the length of one breath and ask yourself this: if they could see exactly what I'm doing right now, and why would they thank me or feel betrayed? That single question collapses all three earlier tests into one. It catches intent. You can't answer honestly without knowing what you're really after. It catches transparency. It literally imagines the lights on, and it catches whose model you're serving, because betrayal is the feeling of being moved against your own interest. If the honest answer is, they'd thank me, proceed. Push, persuade, make your strongest case. There's nothing to apologize for. If the honest answer is, they'd feel had, stop. You've drifted across the line, and no amount of telling yourself it's for their own good changes which side you're standing on. And none of this makes you less effective. I promise you the opposite. The most persuasive people I've ever encountered aren't the slickest. They're the ones you trust, because somewhere in your nervous system, you've registered that they're not working in the dark. That registered safety is the persuasion. You can't fake your way to it. You can only earn it, conversation by conversation. The fear my friend carried, that to influence is to harm, had it exactly backwards. The harm isn't in moving people. The harm is in moving them blind. Learn the difference, and you don't become more dangerous. You become more trustworthy, which, as it turns out, is the very same thing as becoming more influential. The two were never in tension. We were just never taught to tell them apart. If this clarified something for you, join the Rebuild, my free newsletter, where I take these mechanisms one at a time and turn each into something you can actually use. Follow the show while you're at it, so the next one finds you. This episode was narrated by an AI clone of my own voice, trained on this show.